Jai Bhim, Jai Mul Nivasi. I'm Amol Vajji, and this is MNT News Network. And we are here with special primetime special show. And today's topic of discussion in this show is Preamble of the Constitution of India, the lighthouse to guide the obedient and to expose the disobedient. Uh, to discuss this topic with us, we have a guest, a special guest, Dr. Ramratan Dhumal. He is from Aurangabad and he will discuss with us how the preamble of the Constitution is important uh, for uh, for the people of India, for the governors, for the governing, uh, not only the common people of India, but also the governing people of uh, India. So I welcome Dr. Ramratan Dhumal.
Thank
Ramratan
you. Thank
Dhumal,
you.
uh, sir, please shed light on this, how
Okay.
the preamble of India is important,
Okay. Thank you so much, Dr. Amul
especially
Waji.
in the present time.
Yes, yes. Thank you so much, Dr. Amul Waji. I also thank you to the MNT network for giving me this opportunity to speak on this topic. And the day, it's very significant. Today is 26th November, and so I also extend my, wishes on the Constitutional Day to all the viewers of MNT network. And to begin with today's topic, uh, which is Preamble of the Constitution of India, the lighthouse to guide the obedient and expose the disobedient. Now there are a lot of essential elements that exist under this topic. Number one is the first part of it, which talks about the preamble of the Constitution. And then to see preamble of the Constitution to identify the obedience and the disobedience over the last 73 years of our constitution. So 26 November 1949 we adopted this constitution, and since then it is there as a lighthouse, I would say. And so to begin with, with this topic, uh, what I find is, I want to draw an analogy with a river, right? So when we see a river, if it has got a, I mean, if it has to be a very significant one, two things are very important: the source of it, and the tributaries of it, okay, which joins it, and then which gives a life to it. Similarly, when we talk about India as a nation, where there exists huge diversity, uh, the foundation of that nation, it rests on the constitution. So constitution form as the source of that diversity. And there are different walks of life, especially I'm talking about the social life. And so as to have India as one sort of a life, it is important that those different walks of social life need to be submerged again, which are to be guided by constitutional fundamental principles or fundamental values. So with that short analogy, um, I'll begin with Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar, who made a very important observation with respect to how we should build those values, right? And because when we talk about preamble, it enshrines values, right? And first we have to understand that in the context of two things, which I call it values of change, right? And the second one is uh, there are certain, I mean, the first one is it includes certain changes, and second, it on that change, it depends on certain values, right? Now I'm very loosely using the word change here, right? One can say, uh, completely taking a 360 degree sort of a turn, in order to get away from the past, sort of an experiences, and setting a new, sort of a tone, right? uh, just not a tone, but also, a behavior or a practice. So when I say change, it means from that perspective. But when we talk about change, change need to be also supported by certain values, right? uh, in other words, we can always situate it in the context of means and ends. So there are certain ends which we want to have. We want to disassociate ourselves from the past, right, where there was no scope with respect to our existence. That is one thing. The second is, if you want to have, that new sort of an existence, then it should be guided by certain means. So that is one, sort of understanding I try to make here. So with having a constitution, right, with the preamble, okay, uh, there is an urge which we see, which was set on 26 November 1949 with respect to change, right? So when we talk about that, I feel that um, we wanted to have a better life, right? A life, as I said, which was completely dissociated from its past, right? And particularly when we talk about our past, or before the Constitution came into existence, there were a lot of inroads, particularly in terms of our social and political life, right? Uh, when we talk about our social and political life before the Constitution came into force, we find that in the social system we were governed by certain, caste. So the caste system was one of, the stumbling block, right? And that sort of a stumbling block, which had a different, sort of a life, right, for the members of its system. And with that sort of, system, we could not have uh, an egalitarian sort of life, right? A life, where there was no dignity to the individuals. So the urge to change was to get away with that, social system, right? Excuse me. And that's where, we find that, again, I'll refer to Baba Sahib Ambedkar, where he said that, I mean, he refers to caste system with an example that it's like a building, it's like a structure where there are floors but there are no stairs, right? uh, so, if you have that sort of a structure, you cannot excel, right, in terms of securing a better life, in terms of securing a quality life. So in order to get rid of it, right, we need to have a new structure which is completely, you know uh, completely different from what we had in the past, right? So Constitution establishes a new building, a new structure where there are stairs, okay, and that's where, one has the opportunity to excel, right, based on the capabilities. So that is one way to see change. Okay. So our ends, they are mentioned in the Constitution, right? Now with respect to values, I'll come here. Now values are very important, okay. What I find is a change, cannot happen without values, right? uh, if we have a progressive values, right, definitely our change will also be progressive one. If our values are traditional, if our values are discriminatory nature, so definitely the existence of discrimination will be the outcome of it, right? So values are very important. So for an ends, we need to have a meaningful sort of values. So therefore, what I find is, uh, an injustice, if you want to replace, right, it has it should be based on just values. So that is one more important observation that I want to make here. So therefore, an operation, values preaching operation cannot bring justice, right? So hence we need, or the building or the structure which we want to have, need to have a new set of values. So therefore, we need to have a new sort of a constitution, right? And that's where we structured a new building, right, with a new values, with new principles. So that gives us enough justification with respect to having a constitution, right? And what exactly the role of the preamble, though preamble, it's a summation of what exactly we have written in the constitution, right, in an abstract way. But it is important to understand those values, right? Now, in the light of this background, we have to understand the preamble, right? And uh, basically, when we talk about preamble, we have to first also need to reflect on the nature of the constitution that we have. By nature of the constitution, again I'll be referring to Baba Saheb Ambedkar. Baba Saheb Ambedkar, in his Constituent Assembly speech, right, uh, he dealt on a very important point while placing the constitution, and that was, what is the form of constitution and what is the form of government it preaches, right? So a form of a constitution and a form of a government are extremely important before we move to understand the nature of the preamble, right? Now, the form of the constitution and the form of the government, if we go into that speech, it's very long, and we already have paucity of time here. So to summarize what exactly Baba Sahib said was this, that uh, he distinguished between a parliamentary and presidential form of a government, uh, rigid sort of a constitution, and then flexible sort of a constitution. With that sort of models, he said that a constitution which he wanted to have was to have an accountable constitution as against the stability constitution, right? So presidential system, it offers or it gives enough stability to the government, but particularly in India, we don't want stability, we want an accountable government. So accountable government will always work for the people. To put it into the constitutional terms, an accountable government will always go, or will always cherish the values that are placed in the preamble. So it will always look for ends, right, by following the constitutional means. That was the idea which he put forth. And so in the nature of this accountable constitution, what I find is that the constitution, the end of the constitution, is to have an accountable government, and that accountable government should work for the people, right? So with that background, now we'll come to what exactly preamble is all about, right? For a simple understanding, um, I would like to, I mean, if you go through the preamble, we can divide it into three parts, right? uh, Although we have to read it in totality, and it becomes meaningful in that totality, right? But just in order to understand it, uh, if we ask three questions to it, it gives us uh, it gives us meaningful answer there, right? Now, if we read the preamble, there are three questions that we should ask. First is, for whom, right? Second is, for what? And third is, from when, right? So for whom, if we ask this question, I find that the very first word of it, we the people of India. So it is we the people of India. These words, it has got enormous significance. We the people of India is It's not just about the people, right? It is also about the inclusivity of the people that is included in it, right? So when we say we, it's not about certain caste, it's not about certain class of people. It's all who are inclusively included in the constitution. The constitution does not say that that handful elites people or of that generation they made this constitution. No, it's we, which means those who had no subconscious, I mean, at that point of time, even they are included in it, right? So we the people has got enormous significance. The starting point of the preamble is we, and if we go to the last paragraph of our constitution, there is another word which is used there. It's called ourselves. So these two words are very important, right? So it starts with the people and it's end with the people. People are included in it. So for whom? Yes, it's the we the people of India. For what? Yes, this we the people of India, they have come together to form or to constitute India into. And then we have got this five very important terms, that is sovereign, socialist, secular, democratic, and republic, right? We want to constitute India into sovereign. We want to be independent. There is no any foreign control or foreign power control on us in any way. That's sovereign. Socialist, that's a kind of an economic activity which is always responsive to the people, to the needs of the people, right? The third one is secular. The constitution has got no official religion, right? So that's where secular means, right? Democratic, yes, it's the people's rule. People vote, elections are there. So whosoever be in the power, they are answerable to the people, right? And republic, we don't have an hereditary head. Our head is again elected one, right? So it's all about the people, and the people matters. They are the first and the last, under these constitutions, for whom the constitution is all about. So these five terms, they have enormous amount of values, right? Again, I'll say here, because of the paucity of time, we cannot individually go into those terms, right? But however, that's what for what we are there. And this for what also includes four important elements: justice, liberty, equality, and fraternity, right? When we talk about justice, it's not just about individual justice that the constitution serves, right? The individual justice is limited again for a social justice. So our constitution is for individual justice and it's for social justice, right? So it's an amalgamation of this thing, but social stands high. Why? Because if you see the word, the arrangement which is there first, justice, social, economic, and political, right? So social is important, which means the discriminations which are there, unless and until we get rid of social discriminations, we are not going to create a strong nation. Whatever distinctions they are there under the constitution, those distinctions need to be catered, right? We cannot build a strong nation where the society is fragmented. A fragmented society you know cannot have a concerted fight on against the external forces. So when we talk about justice, so social, then comes the economic, and then the political, right? We also have liberty, like liberty of thought, liberty of belief, faith, worship, expression, right? So these liberties are there, though they have this individual character, right? And it's sometimes important individual character so that you can excel it. Individually you can excel it, but when it comes to social, we can have certain limitations. So liberty, yes, we cherish liberty. Liberties are very important, it need to be respected, right? Equality of both status and of opportunity. So India, in the constitution, the preamble very says that that this constitution is to have an equality, that's status and that's for opportunity. Fraternity, I think Baba Sahib Ambedkar uh, gave he gave a lot of significance to this term fraternity. For him, fraternity was uh, one of the essential element of constitution to make it successful. uh, it's not just about brotherhood, what he said, right? It is much more than brotherhood. But if we read his writings, we find that standing for the cause of others, um, without any ulterior sort of a motive, right? The self consciousness among the groups that my brothers, they are suffering and I need to stand for it. It's more about the righteous concern. That's what fraternity is all about. So fraternity. So these are the four important things that are included under the constitution, and that's where if we have these elements, four elements, essential elements, then only we can offer unity and integrity. Then only we can maintain unity and integrity of this nation, right? So for what the answer is, it's for justice, liberty, equality, and fraternity, and for the unity and integrity of this nation. From when? Absolutely, the date is mentioned there, 26th November. We can consider that as an implementation clause. So these are these this is a brief understanding of what constitution, what preamble it's all about. Now, coming to the next point, and I think this forms the second part of our title, right? The obedient and the disobedient. Now, when we talk about obedience, a constitution is not relevant if that constitution is not practical, right? If that constitution is not implementable. Okay. Making a constitution is an easy task, right? But making it pragmatic, I think that is one of the most difficult, sort of a thing. And in recent years, we can see some of the constitutions how they have collapsed, right? I mean, certain devices of the constitution. Okay. So our constitutional makers, they knew this fact that we have to make this constitution workable, right? And in order to make it workable, the one of the most important provision which I find crucial for it is, to identify who has the responsibility to make it, to implement it, right? And that's where Article 12 comes. So when we talk about obedience, uh, I would say that the word obedient, it comes from the word to obey, and to obey, it's like an approved sort of a conduct which need to be performed, right? And it has some sense of duty, right? And when we have some sense of duty in certain institution, certainly a duty is irrelevant unless until there is a right. So what the constitution does is, under part 3 of it gives right to the people, to the individual, and makes the state responsible. So the obedient part which is there, the people has got the right, and the duty is imposed on the state. Okay, that's where Article 12 is placed under part 3 of the constitution, which is the fundamental right category. So from 12 to 35, they are all enforceable. That's what the constitution maker said, and Baba Sahib very clearly said that Article 32 is the heart of the constitution. What do he mean by it, and why did he only consider 32 as the heart of the constitution? Because 32, uh, it is one of the most significant provision which gives power to an individual to appear before the Supreme Court, who is the custodian of this constitution. So access to justice, to the highest court, to the custodian, which is given through Article 32 in the form of writs, right? So therefore this access to justice is to make state obedient. And so therefore the constitution establishes the duty on the state to see that the fundamental rights need to be enforced. So any violation of it will certainly make the state responsible. So that is one important part of obedience. So if the state fails, certainly we can say, okay, fine, this is disobedient, right? But there are a lot of uh, rights which still do not form a part of our fundamental rights category. So under those, take for example the directive principles of state policy. They are mentioned under part 4 of the constitution. So unrealization of it is nothing but a disobedient. So how to make it realize? Again, Baba Sahib said that your directive principle of state policy should form a part of your electoral process. So election should be fought on part 4, right? So that the opposition or the political parties, so the political justice, the opposition political parties, the political parties should make it as a political agenda, so that the state will reflect or will realize or will attempt to realize those part 4 principles. So that's where the disobedience that exists, right now. So absolute I would further say that, so the citizens are also equally responsible, right? And there's a very important study which was done a decade ago by Chicago Law School. It was about the lifespan of the Constitution, and that report says that a Constitution becomes relevant if the citizens, if they have an active participation in it. So for an active participation, I mean, the citizens need to be very conscious, right? So citizens, civil society organizations, right, they have been shouldered with a lot of responsibility. So that check and balance system, so if the state do not respond, then there need to be some kind of pressure from the social group. So the participation of the people is equally important. If the people do not participate, then the state do not act in a more responsive way, right? So this is the important element with respect to obedience. Now, the last sort of a point, uh, how what do I think? I mean, how do I see the Constitution? Now it's 73 years now. Okay, so what I find is Constitution has created certain incentives. Uh, Constitution identifies incentives in the form of entitlements, and so uh, the Constitution, these incentives or these entitlements, they are with respect to the sufferings of the people. So the Constitution is well connected with the suffering of the people. Like, there are a lot of instances in it, and there are very few constitutions which could do that at its very establishment, that they were so connected with the sufferings of the people. This is there. So the only problem which is there is uh, that the people or the general masses, they are not aware that that the Constitution deals with their suffering. So the responsibility rests on the citizens, that they should connect this document with the sufferings of the people. That is, it should be taken to the general public, and if that happens, then uh, the realization of the Constitution or the relevance of the Constitution will be enhanced in a more substantive way. So finally, to put it, what Baba Sahab said in his one of his speech in Constituent Assembly was that the Constitution, it's not just a political document, right? It has to be a social document. So taking to the masses, it's fulfilling that particular wish, that it becomes a social document, right? And we can overcome the sufferings of the people, and we could maintain the unity and integrity of this nation. Yeah. So that's all from my side, Dr. Amol Vaji.
Thank
Yeah.
you, sir. Thank you, Ramratan Dhumal ji. You spoke very nicely. Actually, you spoke in detail on all the aspects of the preamble of the Constitution of India. And I think viewers of our channel will find it very informative. The talk will be found very informative. And with this, uh, we have to close this session now, this show now, because our 30 minutes are about to finish.
Yes.
So thank you again, Ramratan ji. And we end here this show now. Jai Bhim, Jai Mullah.
Thank you. Thank you.